Hello, everyone. Yesterday, I just came out of a state of dry refusal of food and water. All of this took place over the course of 16 days, a so-called dry fast. And now, having just restored my voice a bit with moisture so that I have the opportunity to communicate normally, since before this it was very difficult for me to speak, to communicate, and on one hand I didn't really want to because my state was very quiet and peaceful, and on the other hand, it was quite difficult because my mouth was drying out. There wasn't enough moisture. And this conversation, of course, might not have taken place. And I'll tell you a little bit about myself. My name is Sat Marga. This is a spiritual name. I have been practicing methods of refusing food and water since around 2007 or 2008, when I had my first experiences with giving up food. And throughout all this time, I explored this process on myself so that it would be, well, a very sincere knowledge without books. I don't know if it was conscious or not, but I read very few books on this aspect and relied more on a kind of intuition and self-exploration. And I want to say right away, since I have quite a lot of experience in giving up food and water, this is not an indicator for you, especially for those who are just starting. Because very often a person, having heard that someone hasn't eaten or drunk for a very long time, also wants to repeat these results, often perhaps just for the sake of the result itself, and this sometimes leads to sad consequences. Therefore, everyone has, so to speak, their own path. And you need to be very careful. Feel what is happening, listen to your body, to your intuition, to your inner voice, and act without fanaticism, gradually, step by step. The first thing I want to start with is that absolutely all refusals of food and water, especially long-term ones, should ideally be preceded by cleanses. I use a cleanse called Shank Prakshalana. It is, as I feel it, a simply beautiful cleanse in itself. Very natural and very thorough, because you drink about 3 liters of salted water at a rate of 1 level tablespoon per liter of water. The water is warm, slightly warmer than body temperature, so energy isn't wasted on heating it up, and drinking a glass of water, you accordingly do exercises to stretch the abdomen and peristalsis, stretching the sphincters so that the water begins to pass through the intestines. All of this happens very naturally, very harmoniously. Since the water is saltier than blood, it is not absorbed into the stomach walls. On the contrary, it soaks off what has stuck to the villian walls, toxins, waste, formations, inclusions, all the slag and trash. And as it soaks, it removes all of this naturally, as you are used to, without any additional enemas, without any intestinal stretching or chemicals. It all happens very naturally. As a rule, before long periods of abstaining like this, well, by long I mean probably more than a week, I try to do this cleanse, although, as practice has shown, the body is already quite clean. And for me, it's more like a tradition and a starting point. If your fast is for a short time, literally 1 to 3 days, it's no big deal. You can do it without it, because the body won't even realize yet that you've stopped eating. It's not even a feeling of hunger. The organism will simply start getting used to rest, to the absence of food intake, and will only just begin to switch over. Nevertheless, cleanses are important, even if you are not giving up food or water. I recommend doing them in any case at least 2 to 4 times a year. Doing them 4 times a year is very good at the change of seasons. It is generally a very useful event for the body. After you have done the cleanse and decided to refrain from food or from food and water, your internal attitude is very important, because very often people go into this state with a kind of struggle. I will hold out, I will fast, but I will endure. I am strong, I am brave. No matter what happens, victory will be ours. This is tension. As a rule, when we tense up, especially mentally, certain destructive processes occur. That is, your tension is resistance. Resistance is already a sign of war. You are not in a state of peace, you are starting to fight. Who are you starting to fight with? Yourself. Therefore, a certain aspect of relaxation is very important here, that you enter this unfolding process with a feeling of complete trust in what is happening, without fear, absolutely without negativity. Only positivity, only positivity. The mind is set only on the state that the body will be cleansed and healed. Even if there are some, relatively speaking, negative manifestations in the body, I accept this in advance, and I am already prepared for it. Therefore, it is very important to relax and go into this state, a state of peace, silence, and acceptance of what will happen. When you have started abstaining from food and water, you shouldn't accompany this whole process by constantly lying on the couch or sitting. A state of mobility is very important, so that the body moves, doesn't stagnate, doesn't get sluggish, so to speak, doesn't lie around. Short runs without marathon distances are very good, just when you feel like it. You go for a short run, move around, feel how the body starts to breathe. The breath passes through the lungs, fills you, cleanses you. In the morning, you can simply activate a certain mobility in your body. Besides running, I highly recommend simply taking walks, light, meditative walks in a state of contemplation and relaxation, observing the world, observing nature. It is especially good if you are out of the city at that moment. Or there can be some stretching practices, qigong or yoga, but without excessive physical exertion. Although at first you can allow yourself a little bit of it so that the body starts cleansing faster, after literally 3 or 4 days, it's better to reduce the workload. Almost my entire fast from food and water was spent shoveling snow, because there was a lot of snow and there was plenty of physical labor. And I simply had to do it, because otherwise everything would have been covered in snow and it would be impossible to get out. I am currently in Karelia, in the forest, so there was a lot of physical load. But again, you do all this without fanaticism. You feel your state. If you feel shortness of breath or that your heart is starting to beat faster, you stop, stand, breathe, rest, and then continue. So an important aspect is move. I also want to say a word about clothing or the lack thereof. It is very important that if you wear clothes, they should not be tight, should not restrict movement, and should be natural. Try to avoid synthetics completely so that the body can breathe. When there are no clothes, it is very easy for the body, the skin breathes. Just as it eliminates toxins and waste, it also absorbs moisture and air from the environment. Because in principle, when we are without liquid intake, moisture still gets into us. Even if we don't contact water, the air humidity around us is about 70 to 80%, and this helps us in this practice. Furthermore, as the body begins to adjust and reorganize, a kind of gills open up in you. You begin to breathe through your skin. If your body is wrapped in tight clothing, especially if it's thick synthetics, this process is somewhat difficult, and it's desirable to have as few elastic bands or tight straps as possible. It is advisable to be barefoot all this time if your feet don't get too cold. If there is an opportunity to walk barefoot on the grass in nature, feel the connection with the earth. You can, on a certain mental and energetic level, get rid of waste and toxins by giving them to the earth, as well as receive energy from the earth. This can help you even if you just think about it and visualize it. Whether it actually happens or not is a somewhat different aspect. So pay attention to your clothing and what you will be wearing during this process. During the refusal of food and water, your sleep will be disrupted. You need to be prepared for this too. And this process is very individual for everyone. Someone, on the contrary, sleeps more. Someone sleeps less, but a certain restlessness might simply begin. Because I am used to sleeping at night, and if I don't sleep, a light stress might start. How can this be? I need to get enough sleep and rest. Pay no attention to it. Relax. Since the process you are entering implies a certain transformation and a change in your sleep pattern. This is also part of that transformation. So just accept it and relax. Sometimes you might not sleep at all during the night, and sometimes you might sleep for 9 or 10 hours. Everyone will have their own story, so be completely relaxed about it. Next aspect. Since your body and organism will start to cleanse, certain odors may be produced through your breath and skin. For some, they may be very unpleasant. The smell of solvent, acetone, a chemical smell. This precisely indicates that the cleansing process is underway. You should treat this positively too. No need to think, oh, I smell. It smells, so it smells. When we go to the bathroom, it smells there too. Everyone accepts this. There is nothing terrible about it. When you go to the bathroom, you cleanse your body as much as possible from waste and toxins. And during the refusal of food and water, the same thing happens. So accept this as well and relax in it. And what's interesting is that this is an indicator of your overall level of toxicity and impurity. This time, when I had 16 days of dry fasting, my body didn't smell at all. There was no smell from my body, nor from my mouth. What's more, people came to visit me once, and I even made an attempt and asked them, "Sniff me. Is there any unpleasant feeling?" Because I know this is common. And people said that it didn't smell like anything at all, even though it had already been over a week. And all this time, naturally, I didn't wash or brush my teeth. This is an indicator that when the smell disappears, your body is approaching a kind of purity. Of course, there are still many toxins on a cellular level, but those are longer processes. But it means that some main sources of dirt have already left you. So be prepared that you might smell unpleasant. This is also completely normal. Pay no mind to it. On the contrary, you can even be glad that cleansing of the organism is taking place at that moment. That waste is exiting through breath and through the pores of the skin. Toxins and waste are leaving too. All the dirt is leaving you. In a way, you are washing away your polluted channels through these smells, and these smells are connected precisely with the regeneration of your tissues, with the cleansing of your body. The thing is that the weakest, most unnecessary cells begin to die off, and the body either feeds on them or tries to eliminate them. And this is what causes these unpleasant smells. Usually during a long refusal of food and water, two crisis situations occur. When the initial cleansing happens, when the body is just starting to adapt to this cleansing, it doesn't yet know how to eliminate these toxins. It has forgotten how it's done because we have never done it, and it needs to adapt. A blockage of these toxins occurs which the body cannot eliminate yet, and so it starts to smell. Later, when it finds ways to consume these cells and transform them into energy, this stops. And on the contrary, you may feel a state of euphoria, strength, a lightness. Don't get too carried away by this state either. Still be very careful and attentive. Listen to your body. Then somewhere around, again it's individual for everyone, usually on the 8th or 10th day, a second crisis situation occurs where a deeper cleansing happens on a cellular level. Sometimes this state provokes illnesses that are in a latent state. An illness could manifest at any moment, but had never manifested before. But this state of refusing food can trigger these ailments, and here too you need to listen closely. If this state doesn't bother you too much, it's better to push through it. If you have uncomfortable pain sensations, just proceed calmly. If, of course, you start feeling very bad, it's better to slowly come out of it and continue next time. Because the most important principle here, of course, is do no harm. Therefore, with every step, with every day, you move closer to your healthy state. And a healthy state is not just when the body doesn't cough or sneeze, but when it adapts very flexibly to different conditions. With food, without food, to heat, to cold. That is, it accepts all forms of being, of perceiving this life, and doesn't react too strongly to these changes. This applies to both your physical state and your mental state. Among the undoubted pluses of why all this is done, right? You can acquire a certain autonomy, such a state of freedom from attachment to food, from suffering, from worrying about food. Recently in the news, they reported that a large ocean liner was left without power for a week, and there was terrible panic. People were there for just a week without food, even though it was dropped to them from helicopters or by other means. Yet they already had fights over this food, and waste was overflowing because there was no electricity and drains didn't work. In short, there was terrible panic. I think that if you complete a course of, say, 2 weeks of abstaining from food, you will look at all of this with a slight smirk, a smile, without getting wrapped up in what's happening. That is, you can easily spend that week without food, without water, without any critical deviations or the destruction of your internal state in the form of panic, anxiety, or suffering. Therefore, important benefits. You won't need food for a long period of time. You won't need water. You won't need to go to the bathroom. You won't need toilet paper. All you need for this is yourself, your internal state, your body, and the observation of it all. And during this process of observing what is happening, your mind starts to become quieter and quieter. Fewer anxieties, fewer thoughts that pull you into the past or future and throw you out of the present moment. You feel less like communicating and want more to be in a state of inner silence and meditation. When I was recording and reporting on this fast, at a certain point I even skipped some days because I didn't want to turn on the camera or communicate at all. The state was so quiet. So observe both the cleansing of the body and the cleansing of your mental space. We also have a lot of waste and garbage in our heads. And with the help of this practice, that space is cleansed very deeply too. It's just like doing a major cleanup not only in your body, but in your attic as well. You remove all the junk you've accumulated there. And the more you remove, the more free space and light there is. And you can move and dance there without fear of tripping over some old thought, resentment, complaint, or judgment. The fuss around food and everyday chores or events disappears. You don't reject them, deny them, or throw them away. You know they simply exist, and your state of anxiety stops. More and more often you find yourself in the present moment in your true life. And this is the most amazing, beautiful state. When I started all this, I was driven mostly by this state of silence and peace. At first, I wasn't interested in the body. I was more interested in exploring my inner state, my true self. I think this experience will be very interesting for you as well. Don't forget about your inner state. Don't just watch your body, but also the silence and peace within you. Of course, it's better to do these fasts from food and water somewhere outside the city, where you are alone or in a group of people who support you. In principle, if you are at home and your family or the people you are with approve of your decision and support you, that's also not bad, but still a lot of temptations arise. Loud sounds, interactions. And very often, especially when a person is just starting, negative reactions and emotions sometimes arise, and this can affect your loved ones and surroundings. So you need to be prepared for this. When I run such groups, there are many stresses and catharses. And you look at all this with a kind of compassion, but you understand that a person needs to go through this so that they can cleanse all of this out of themselves and feel free. Therefore, of course, it is better to do this in nature in a state of solitude. That is, you are in a state of oneness. When you are alone, you draw closer to this state of oneness with everything. And in this state, you go deeper into silence and peace. In the city, it's a bit harder, of course. And of course, honor and praise to those who carry out such regimes in the city. I understand how difficult it is. Doing it out of town is, of course, much easier. And in general, our space welcomes groups that want to give up food and water or try this state, as well as individual projects. Of course, it's better to do this when someone is watching over you. Someone who has already been in this state themselves at least a little bit and lived through it, not from books, but from personal experience, and can give advice or help at the right moment. A very important factor is the transition out of a dry fast. As with any fast, actually, the thing is, after you start eating or drinking, the body's cleansing processes are still ongoing. If you abruptly cut them off, it will be like crashing a car into a wall. And instead of smoothly slowing down and transitioning to another lifestyle and diet, an accident happens to the body. It was cleansing, pure, filled with energy, and suddenly food starts entering it all at once. A particularly important factor is not to have too much food or water. Everything is done little by little, gradually, in small doses. Well, on the internet and websites everywhere, there are many different ways to break a fast. On juices, on vegetables, on water, with lemon, without. Everyone can have their own approach. The main thing is to remember one rule: minimal quantities unhurriedly, very thoroughly. If it's food, chew it well without getting consumed by the taste sensations, because you might have missed taste so much that you might rush at the food. So it's better, of course, to have someone monitor you and not give you too much, or you will have to exert even more willpower than when you weren't eating or drinking, because this process can be like an avalanche, and many make mistakes here. Therefore, control small sips very thoroughly. Even when you drink juice or anything else, try to chew the juice or moisture. That is, literally stretch even one small sip into 2 or 3 smaller sips. So pay a great deal of attention to the exit. Study how to exit properly, and don't break down after you have come out of the fast. There is one very interesting point. For a certain period of time, longer or shorter it varies, you might not get drawn into food. Since your taste buds become very heightened, you will need fewer flavors, less salt, less sugar, fewer spices. If you used to drink pure juice, now it might be enough to drop literally a fifth or a third of that juice into water, and it will already be a firework of flavors for you. And the same goes for food. Eat simple types of food. It's wonderful if you switch to raw foodism or vegetarianism and give up meat. Grains, vegetables, and fruits are very beneficial. You may feel that you stop depending on this food. Steamed buckwheat or oatmeal is literally enough for you. You will move away from bread and products with intensely rich flavors. Later, this might return. It's not guaranteed to stay, but nevertheless, you will at least know that you can manage without it, that you can get by with very little or practically without food at all. That is, food will become not life itself, but just an adventure, a game. I'll play with food. It will stop consuming you and being your master. You can take it like an object, see if you need it or not, and put it back. You become the master of both your appetite and your taste sensations. So after entering back, try to have fewer strong flavors, keep food simpler, and naturally keep the quantity much smaller. Juices, herbs. Eat living food, consume living food. And of course, everything that happens after you come out of abstaining from food or water, you will feel a deep joy, peace, and belief in yourself that you were able to do it, that you can do it again and again. And do it. At first, of course, do it in waves. Eat, don't eat, drink, don't drink. But then you will see that it will make practically no difference to you whether you eat or not. That you might even grow tired of food in a way, so that when you eat, you'll say, "No, I don't want to anymore. I want to stay in this state where I am completely clean, where I transition to other types of energy." This is an amazing state, and you will be in both worlds. And choose. I can eat. I cannot eat. And what's most interesting is that your sense of hunger as a form of suffering may disappear. Because for many, this feeling of hunger feels like suffering. If you aren't given food at that moment, you suffer. When you lose this feeling of hunger or view it as an object, it stops taking control over you, and you get on a first-name basis with it. You understand that this hunger is it's all happening in your head. The head starts interacting with the body. Processes start. But the one who observes both the head and the body is not involved in either. Try to be an observer of what is happening. But this already touches on the spiritual aspect of your inner self, your inner world. So try abstaining from food and water. Start gradually. Study it, enjoy this process, and become more and more confident in it. I think it will bring many positive aspects into your life.